Welcome to ZoomInData, your go-to channel for in-depth Azure Cloud, Serverless, and modern development interview preparation. In this video, we dive deep into the top 25 Azure Functions HTTP triggers interview questions for 2026. Perfect for developers, architects, and anyone preparing for AZ-204 certification or building serverless APIs. We cover creation, request, response handling, routing, parameters, authorization levels, keys, cores, webhooks, payloads, streaming, middleware, authentication, versioning, rate limiting, file uploads, open API support, debugging, security, and best practices. All explained in clear, interview-ready technical language to help you confidently ace your next interview. Welcome to ZoomInData, your go-to channel for in-depth Azure Cloud, Serverless, and modern development interview preparation. In this video, we dive deep into the top 25 Azure Functions HTTP triggers interview questions for 2026. Perfect for developers, architects, and anyone preparing for AZ-204 certification or building serverless APIs. We cover creation, request, response handling, routing, parameters, authorization levels, keys, cores, webhooks, payloads, streaming, middleware, authentication, versioning, rate limiting, file uploads, open API support, debugging, security, and best practices. All explained in clear, interview-ready technical language to help you confidently ace your next interview. 2. Explain HTTP request and HTTP response in functions. HTTP request represents the incoming HTTP request with properties for headers, query, body, and route parameters. HTTP response, or iAction result in .NET, defines the outgoing response including status code, headers, and body content. In isolated worker model, middleware pipeline processes HTTP request before function execution. Functions return iAction result derivatives, OK object result, not found result, for standardized responses. 3. How do you handle different HTTP methods? Specify allowed methods in HTTP trigger attribute, e.g., HTTP methods equals GET, post, or function, JSON, methods, array. Use wildcard to accept all methods or separate functions for different verbs. Route constraints can further restrict methods per route template. Unsupported methods automatically return 405 method not allowed. 4. What is route templating in HTTP triggers? Route templating defines custom URL paths using parameter syntax in the route property. Default route is API, function name. Custom routes override with constraints, e.g., route, products, id, int. Supports optional parameters, suffix, and catch-all, prefix. Route parameters automatically bind to function method parameters by name. 5. How do you handle query parameters and route parameters? Query parameters accessed via HTTP request, query collection or bound directly to method parameters. Route parameters extracted from URL template and bound by name to function parameters. Optional parameters marked with in route, default values provided in code. Type conversion automatic for primitives. Complex types require model binding. 6. Explain anonymous versus function versus admin authorization levels. Anonymous allows public access without keys, suitable for open APIs. Function requires function-specific key in X functions key header or query string. Admin requires master, host key with full app access. Use sparingly. Authorization level configured per function. Keys managed in portal or CLI. 7. How do you return different status codes and content types? Return specific iAction result types. OK result 200. Not found result 404. Bad request result 400. Set content type header via response. Headers or content result. Use status code result or object result for custom codes and bodies. JSON serialization automatic for POCO returns with application, JSON content type. 8. What are function keys and host keys? Function keys are per function secrets for authorization at function level. Host keys, master, admin, provide access to all functions in the app. Keys passed via X functions key header or code equals query parameter. Master key additionally allows admin operations like invoking any function. 9. How do you implement CORS in HTTP functions? Configure CORS in host. JSON under HTTP section with allowed origins array, specific domains or supports credentials flag for cookie, auth header forwarding. Pre-flight options requests handled automatically. Production recommends specific origins over wildcard for security. 10. Explain webhook support in HTTP triggers. HTTP triggers natively support webhooks with configurable validation and payload processing. Generic webhook validates signature if provided, template-based for GitHub, Stripe, etc. Webhook functions receive raw payload for custom validation. Durable functions often orchestrate webhook workflows with human interaction. 11. How do you handle large payloads in HTTP requests? Increase request size limit via host. JSON HTTP. Max request size. Default 100 MB in premium. Stream large payloads using HTTP request. Body as stream to avoid memory loading. Use chunked transfer encoding for very large uploads. Consider blob storage upload with SAS token for files exceeding limits. 12. What is the maximum request size? Default maximum request size is 100 MB in premium, dedicated plans. Consumption plan limited to lower defaults, configurable up to plan limits. Response size limited similarly. Large responses should stream or redirect. Timeout constraints may affect large payload processing duration. 13. How do you stream responses in HTTP functions? Return push stream result or use HTTP response. Body. Write async for streaming output. In isolated model, use HTTP response message with streamed content. Enables efficient handling of large responses or real-time data feeds. Supports chunked transfer encoding automatically. 14. Explain middleware in .NET isolated HTTP functions. Isolated model supports middleware pipeline similar to ASP.NET Core for pre-post processing. Register middleware in function startup to modify request, response, logging, auth, validation. Executes before function invocation for cross-cutting concerns. Enables advanced scenarios like custom routing or telemetry injection. 15. How do you handle authentication in HTTP triggers? Use EasyAuth with Entra ID, Microsoft account, or social providers for token validation. Implement custom JWT validation with middleware in isolated model. Managed identities for downstream service calls. Function keys for simple API key protection. 16. What is the difference between proxies and direct HTTP triggers? Proxies. Deprecated. Provided routing, mocking, and transformation layer outside functions. Direct HTTP triggers handle routing and logic within function code. Proxies used proxies. JSON for configuration, replaced by API management or middleware. Direct triggers offer better performance and control. 17. How do you implement API versioning? Use root prefix, API, v1, function, API, v2, function, for versioned endpoints. Separate functions or function apps per major version. Header-based versioning with middleware checking except version. Deprecate old versions with custom responses. 18. Explain rate limiting options for HTTP functions. Implement custom rate limiting with durable entities or Redis cache for token bucket. API management frontend provides built-in quotas and rate limits. Middleware in isolated model tracks requests per IP or key. Premium plan with static warm instances improves rate handling. 19. How do you handle file uploads? Accept multi-part, form data and process HTTP request. Form. Files collection. Stream large files directly to blob storage to avoid memory pressure. Generate SAS tokens for client direct upload to storage. Validate file type, size, and virus scan before processing. 20. What is the role of HTTP trigger attribute? HTTP trigger attribute defines HTTP trigger configuration on function method parameter. Specifies authorization level, methods, and route template. Supports webhook type for specialized webhook validation. Enables parameter binding from request data. 21. How do you return JSON responses easily? Return POCO objects. Runtime automatically serializes to JSON with 200 OK. Use OK object result for explicit control over status and content. JSON result or content result with application, JSON type. Configure JSON serializer options for custom formatting. 22. Explain OpenAPI, Swagger support. Built-in OpenAPI metadata generation for HTTP triggers, v2 plus runtimes. Enable via host. JSON extensions OpenAPI section with version 2.0.3.0. Exposes Swagger, JSON and UI at API, Swagger, UI. Custom attributes decorate functions for richer documentation. 23. How do you debug HTTP triggers locally? Use Azure Functions core tools, FuncStart, with NGROK for external webhook testing. Breakpoints in VS Code, Visual Studio hit on local requests. Logstream shows real-time request, response details. Postman or curl test local endpoint, http://localhost port 7071. 24. How do you secure HTTP endpoints in production? Require function, admin keys or implement Entra ID authentication. Restrict IP addresses or use private endpoints, VNet integration. Validate input and implement rate limiting to prevent abuse. Monitor with application insights for suspicious patterns. 25. Best practices for building APIs with HTTP triggers. Use route templating and versioning for clean, maintainable URLs. Implement proper authentication and input validation. Return appropriate status codes and structured JSON responses. Monitor performance and secure with keys or Entra ID. Thank you for watching. If this video helps you prepare for your Azure Functions interview, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your network. Don't forget to subscribe to ZoomInData and hit the bell icon for more in-depth cloud computing, serverless, and Azure interview prep videos every week. Drop your questions or topic requests in the comments. Let's zoom in on your success together.